My favorite episode of this season is the Supremes. I mentioned it before.
Yes.
First of all, Glenn Close, who's a marvelous actress, is in that episode. We get they're trying to fill a vacancy on the Supreme Court, and they have to pick like the most moderate of moderates in order to to make. I can't remember the actor's name, but he's from Deep Space
It's
Nine. He
Robert
plays.
Picardo.
Yeah.
He was from Voyager, and please state the nature of your constitutional emergency.
Yes. Voyager. Sorry, you're right. Not Deep Space.
Nice.
Sorry.
He was the
Yeah.
EMH.
He plays the holographic doctor, and I love the. I don't know how I feel about an issue until I'm faced with it, and you could just see Bartlett's like face fall off. And look, it's a valid way of being. A lot of times I find myself saying that, like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this until I have to deal with it, and we take it into case by case scenario because I can't paint with too wide a brush. But I think because the Supreme Court is the ultimate law of the land in terms of what's constitutional and what isn't, there's a belief that we should get people with very distinct points of view on things in order to guide the court in a particular direction. That's why it's so important when a president has to nominate somebody. And so you have the Democrats going, this is our chance to open up the playing field for more constitutionally progressive laws. And then there's the Republicans. This is our chance. This is our chance to move the country back to the days of antiquity. Less things are legal. More, a more conservative approach to things. And what is the red hot button issue underneath all of that? It's abortion. The woman's right to choose and all of that. But you go even deeper. It's where are decisions made? Where are decisions for rights made? Is it the person or is it the state? Is it the state or is it the federal government? What are we doing here? Which direction are we going to go in? And that all ultimately gets determined by who's on that Supreme Court bench. But the other thing I love about this episode is they start talking about, like, it's not just the Supreme Court. It's all these other courts, all these circuits. They're like, laws get made everywhere. It's one of the people like get so excited about the presidency, and they ask me like, why I'm more like emotional about it. I'm like, because your life is ultimately determined by local politics. Sure, federal government, it gets all the sexy news coverage, but if you talk about things that really impact your day to day, it's your local and state government that do that. I'm more affected by what happens at the state side here in Florida than anything that happens on Capitol Hill.
Yep.
So that's where my emotion and my attachment lie. So I love the episode because essentially what they do is they convince the very liberal judge to resign so that he can be replaced by liberal firebrand and previous haver of an abortion, Glenn Close, and that way they can nominate they can nominate John Lithgow from Footloose as
William Fichtner.
as the judge that's got the vacant seat. And it was a great episode, and I love the ideas behind it. I love the politics behind it. I thought that was handled. I thought it was written really well, and I thought it was handled. I mean, it was utter fantasy, but I thought it was, Andrew, a really nice way of bringing the importance of the court to a mainstream television watching audience.
Definitely. And I mean, it's kind of funny. This episode is, it's kind of cited as like, anytime that example gets brought up, it gets brought up as kind of this ultimate Aaron Sorkin moderate thing. And Aaron Sorkin didn't even write it.
Right.
And I mean, it's an interesting episode in terms of how they talk about not only the court, but I guess kind of the trafficking of ideas, where it's like, when you have that meeting between William Fichtner's character and the president, he's like, who's going to write the extreme decision on the other side that someone will dig up 30 years later, and that'll form the cases of law,
right?
And things along that line. I mean, yeah, great episode. Glenn Close is great in it. It probably has two of my all-time favorite lines and line reads in this entire series, which is when Josh walks out of the second meeting with Glenn Close and says, "I love her mind. I love her shoes." And the other one is the actor who plays Judge Ashland.
Mhm.
That man put some sauce on the word bastard in a way that is just unique.
He's a great actor.
Yeah.
I wish
Oh,
I could
yeah,
remember,
and
I wish
you
I
can
could
tell he
remember
was
his
having
name, but
fun the
he's in a
entire
lot of
time.
stuff. He's in a lot of stuff. Jesse, any thoughts on the Supremes?
No, I really liked it. I think the one thing that stuck out to me was the very end when both judges, like the whole time, you're expecting like there to be this massive argument that's going to happen if they cross each other's paths in the same room.
Right.
And then when it happens,
Like they're both going to go for guns.
right. When it happens, they shake hands and they have this great civil discourse about their positions. And you watch both, Toby and Josh in awe because what they thought would happen is not happening. And then they realize that, holy shit, this will work. This will work. And I think that was one of my favorite parts, definitely of the season and of this show or of that episode.
You know what it's really emblematic of? I just want to say this. I don't want to go too far off on a tangent or tell too long of an anecdote, but I don't know if you guys know this about me. For as long as I've been doing a podcast, I keep it really to myself, but I love to debate people.
Oh
no!
Yeah,
this is a revelation.
Yeah, I'm usually so agreeable. But it's why I've loved doing. I used to love doing Damn You Hollywood for as long as I did because Robert was a great debate partner. When we were at our best, it was when we disagreed, but we disagreed like gentlemen.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I love a good debate, and I've had plenty over the years on this podcast where me and another person, whether it was Jason, you, Andrew, David, we stood apart on things, but we were able to have a civil debate, and we were able to bring each other different ideas and really stretch and pull in ways that you don't get to when everyone agrees. I've said all along, I don't want to do this if everyone agrees it's boring. And I don't want to be on a show where everyone agrees it's boring. I want a show where people have different ideas. That makes people uncomfortable. People don't want necessarily confrontation. My son goes through this now, and this is why I said I'm going to keep this really, really short. Jonas, just like his father and just like his grandfather, craves confrontation and debate. And he has a sister who craves agreeability and stability and, not being challenged. And there's more people like his sister than not, and it drives Jonas up the wall. And I said, you got to find your people. You got to find your Robert, and then you got to leave everybody else alone because they don't like it, but very few people get into law who seek agreeability. It's people who like to argue, like to challenge, and it was fun to see two minds do battle against each other, like Glenn Close and what's his nuts. Great battle between Glenn Close and what's his nuts. And when you have a mind to appreciate it, it is a sight to behold.